Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our Standing Committee on Education this afternoon. My name is Peter Johnson, and I am the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Education. And I think it's just, I would just like to share with you that I was the chair of finance for the past year and 2 or 3 months, and I was elected the chair of education last week, Tuesday. So we are all still learning about this space, and we look forward to hearing from all of you what you do in the education space. I am joined by some of our more senior members of provincial parliament that served in the specific committee for quite a few years. Before we get started, just in terms of apologies, we have received only one apology for today's meeting from member Donita Stevens. And just for record purposes, I'm just going to ask the members to firstly introduce themselves. And then I will hand over to the Governing Body Foundation and the Federation of Governing Bodies of South African Schools for brief, your name and surname and your role within your organization. Member Walters.
I'm Thomas Walters, a member of the committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Benedicta van Minnen, a permanent member of the committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wendy Kaiser-Philander, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ferlin Christians, a member of this committee.
Thank you, members. And while we have Member Syed.
Good afternoon, Khalid Sayed, member of the committee.
Thank you, Member Syed. Do we have any members online or? Okay, perfect. Over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alex Pinnock, Governing Body Foundation, Western Cape.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dave Campbell, Governing Body Foundation. I'm the Provincial Executive Officer.
Nadine Muller, good afternoon. Deputy Chairperson, Governing Body Foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andre Franken from FETSAS.
Afternoon, everyone. Helmien Slabber from FETSAS.
Afternoon, colleagues. Rian van der Berg, Deputy CEO at FETSAS.
Good afternoon, Wayne Sicily from FETSAS.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Fischer, I'm also from FETSAS.
Afternoon, everybody. Darian Meyer, also from FETSAS.
Good afternoon, everybody. Justus Koenraad, FETSAS.
Thank you very much. I just want to check if we have any officials from the WCED online. We have 2 online.
Yes, good afternoon. Ridwan Lani, in the Chief Directorate Districts.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Heather van Ster, Chief Director Districts. Just to tender an apology for my supervisor, DDG, Mr. Alan Meyer. He's with a KZN delegation, but he will join as soon as he can. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. William Janchis, Director, Institutional Management and Governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And our days is still open.
Well, that one is still open.
There we go. Thank you very much. A warm welcome to everyone present this afternoon. Members, we will be dealing with two presentations this afternoon. The first will be from the Governing Body Foundation that will present on the role, effectiveness and challenges currently faced by the SGBs across the province. Thereafter, it will be the Federation of Governing Bodies of South African Schools that will also present on the role, effectiveness and challenges currently faced by the school governing bodies across the province. So I would like to request you that you please, on your printed presentations, please make notes of your questions that you would like to pose after the presentations, as we have two quite lengthy presentations that we will deal with, and we will do the questions and answer sessions at the end of both of the presentations. With that being said, Mrs. Pinnock, over to you. Thank you so much. And please, we really do not mind if you get a WhatsApp call on your device. Personal problems, that's fine.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon again to our colleagues and members. And Chair, thank you very much. We have introduced ourselves, so just start with a couple of comments first about the background to our work and our presentation, and to say thank you to the Standing Committee on Education for the invitation to share our work and our experiences of SGBs in our province. So I speak on behalf of Western Cape governing body members, and therefore our views are restricted mainly to our member schools, and I'll talk a little bit more about our member schools in a moment. And they're the ones that we work closely with, and so our information and our views are based on our interactions with them. And the issues which we look at, which schools are facing and SGBs are facing, are not necessarily unique to Western Cape schools. Many of them are experienced by schools and governing bodies across the province and across our country. So let's talk a bit about who we are. Our strapline is: we are the thought leader in cooperative school governance. The word cooperative is key in the work that we do, because we believe that cooperation on governing bodies and in the school community is the key to successful schools, cooperation with the principal and with the school management as well. And so the work we do is very much aligned with that vision of cooperation in all that we do as well. So our national membership is just over 800 schools, and in the Western Cape we have 290 schools. As an organization, we are independent, non-aligned, we are non-profit, and we're recognized by the Department of Basic Education and the provincial education departments across the country. Our membership is fee-based, so those schools, governing bodies that wish to join us will pay an annual membership fee, and then they have access to all of our resources and advice. We run a sliding scale of our fees. we start with the schools that fee. Some of which will pay no fees, and others which will pay fund here. And schools go up the scale, and we look at the fee status of the school and so on. We will charge increasingly more. And so clearly, the schools which charge the highest fees are to their parents are charged our highest fee as well. We receive a subsidy from the Western Cape Education Department, which allows us to subsidize schools that are in poorer communities or are no-fee schools or quintile 1 or 2 schools. And we also receive donations from a number of high-fee schools over and above their fee, which enables us as well to ensure that our low or no-fee schools may become members of our organization. So we are inclusive, and we will not deny membership to anybody based on fees. So a closer look at our numbers in the Western Cape, a total of 290 schools. 90 of them are no fee paying schools. 130 are low to mid fee paying, and 70 are high fee paying schools. So it's a full range across the quintiles. We're present in all 8 districts in our province. We see ourselves as a unique organization because of our cooperative approach to governance. We are non-litigious. Our aim is to work through collaboration with the Department of Education, with schools, with other entities and partners to reach solutions. So we're not a legally based organization, as it were. And we are solution focused. So as I've said, we try and reach a solution in the most comfortable way possible for all parties. Our approach is needs-based. So on the one hand, the needs that we understand from schools and HVs, we've been working for a long time, nearly 20 years since we've been in existence. But then we also will work with schools and governing bodies as needs arise. And our intention, therefore, is to work in the longer term, but also in the short term, and to help to fix problems that might arise. We're relatively small as an organization, but we believe we have a strong presence and a strong voice across our province and across our country. We've talked about fees, and our foundation is one of collaboration and relationship building. What we do, essentially, we build capacity of SGBs and capacity to enable them to work with and understand legislation and regulations, and become the best possible SGB that they can be, often in a short period of time, 3 years, if all members are new. And we do this through providing guidance to SGBs and to principals who form part of the SGB. We support SGBs with policy implementation, with their roles and responsibilities, and more about that later. We represent our member schools' interests at the National Department of Education and at provincial departments of education, so to the Western Cape Education Department here. And both the DBE and WCED consult with us across a range of issues, including the minister and the head of the department, and you connect with them termly in a consultative forum, and we provide the agenda items. They respond in writing and also respond at the meeting. And just as an aside, we find those meetings very, very productive, both with the MEC and with the head of education and senior officials in the WCED. We find there's a very good listening atmosphere. and they have thought about their responses that they offer to us. Clearly, they don't always take what we say, but there are occasions we'll mention a few where they get some changes as a result. So as part of our vision, we strive for effective school governance, as I've said, and ethical governance informed by policy. So policy is at the center of what we do when we advise schools and work with governing bodies. But we believe in ethical governance, and that culture is something that from our organization we try to imbue into the SGBs that we work with and the schools that we work with. Clearly, openness and trust is something that we view, those elements we view really in a very important light. And then one of the critical areas of our work is working with the difference between governance and management, and something which is often misunderstood in the public school context. And so a lot of our work is around clarifying what those roles are and how do the SGB and the school's management, the principal and management, work together, but stay in their lanes so that there's not overlap. So that comes to clear role definitions and boundaries, and we encourage consensus-based decision-making and an approach of no secrets and no surprises, both on the governing body itself and also governing body's relationship with the parent body, with the school management team and the staff where possible. So coming closer to our brief for the day, which is to look at challenges in SGB functioning in the Western Cape. And so we've listed some of them. It's not exhaustive, but these are some of the ones that we come across or that are common. The chair versus the principal is, and when I say versus, I mean that literally, because sometimes that's what happens in schools when there's a lack of understanding or there's malicious intent on one part or the other, or there is a lack of transparency in their relationship, or where principals and SGB chairs are not meeting regularly with the no secrets and no surprises policy. So that is a very common challenge that SGBs face and schools face. The interpretation and implementation of policies, again, some schools will interpret policies differently, and so we try to align them with the correct interpretation of a policy. And when poor interpretation of policy happens, that's when there are issues on a governing body and in a school. We do find that sometimes there's inconsistent SGB meeting attendance, maybe of 1 or 2 members, but it can affect the quorum and affects efficient functioning. Attendance at Provincial Education Department training for SGBs, sometimes SGB members are reluctant to attend, or they'll send one person who then doesn't report back properly, and so the messages are not coming through sometimes, not all the time. And then weak succession planning, where SGBs don't anticipate changes in their membership and on planning for that, and likewise they're not anticipating the change of the SGB in the March of the particular year, and sometimes there are inadequate handover processes which hamstring the next SGB. Boundary and role confusions I've mentioned, lack of guidance from the school principal, and the school principal holds a key role on the as a guide, and sometimes principals may not be as clued up as they should be. Lack of understanding of governance experience. And that can be because people have not served in a governing body before, or because their home or personal backgrounds or their professional background hasn't given them any idea what governance is. And sometimes we need to work with those governing bodies. Thank you. As I said, our training is proactive, and we've included a list here of training that we do. Some of it is in person and some of it is online, and you can look through the list. It's a curriculum that we've developed over the years, and we roll it out over the 3 years as we believe appropriate for the SGB. So we will start with the first bullet at the beginning of an SGB's term. So the development of a charter, the constitution, the code of conduct. What does good governance look like? Should you refresh the vision and mission and values of your school, and so on, down to the bottom, the handover process from one SGB to the next. Interestingly, the WCED is exploring with us the possibility of partnering with them and the Principals Academy. The Principals Academy, if you've not heard of it, is a Western Cape-based organization which is run by retired principals. It's also a non-profit. And these retired principals and the organization select, or people volunteer, select principals across the province with the help of circuit managers and district managers, principals whom they feel could benefit from this work. And these principals then are put through a leadership training course through the business school, UCT Business School, over their holidays. And then for a 3-year period, they are mentored by retired principals. So their work is focusing on capacitating and developing leadership amongst principals. And so the Western Cape Education is talking to us about a triangle of Western Cape setting up, using the resources and setting up training, the Principals Academy working with principals, and we work with the governing body of that school or those schools. Because one can capacitate the principal, but if the governing body is not firing, it's not going to be a happy marriage, and vice versa. How do members work with us? How do we work with members? Well, in person, either through visits to schools or our training that we do in schools for groups of schools or individuals, through email and telephone and WhatsApp. So they will communicate with us, and we will, in a personal way, give them advice and allow them, hopefully, to grow in their work. And then, as I've said, we have a very strong website which has many e-seminars on it, so principals can log in and watch carefully curated content. We have many exemplar policies which member schools can simply download and personalize for their own school. And we have handbooks which deal with anything from staff discipline to learner discipline, and so on. And we believe that we are up to date through our work, and we send out monthly newsletters on a national basis and updates provincially and alerts provincially. And so we believe that our members have access to depth and breadth of communication and information, and we believe we serve them well in those areas. I'd like to hand over to Dr. Nadine Muller, who will take us through the next 10 or 12 slides. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So perhaps just to talk through a little bit the nature of the focus of the work that the Governing Body Foundation is involved in, but particularly how this relates to how SGBs in fact function on the ground, what they struggle with and what they seem to be excelling with. In terms of relationships, the focus of the GBF's work is to look at what's happening within the school. So we're looking at relationships, building and enhancing relationships within the school, and then to expand and extend to talk through relationships between the school and various external stakeholders, including the WCED. In that regard, I think the probably of all of the district officials, the most important player in that game is the circuit manager. And so where there is a need, what the GBF is involved in is helping to ensure be and the circuit manager and that there is constant contact between school and in that. Where, for example, issues arise that talk to struggles or difficulties. One example would be around recruitment and selection, the appointment of teachers, PL1s, deputies, departmental heads, and so on. The recruitment process is a lengthy one. Often schools will perceive it to be dragging out a long time. Their frustration lands with the GBF. And so in those consultation sessions that Mr. Campbell was referring to, we feed back to the WCD to say, this is what schools and SGBs are struggling with, where are you at? And so at the moment, the WCD around the recruitment and selections process have put in place a process to review based on the feedback they've received from governing body associations. As regards partner organizations, we don't have formal collaborations. What we do is encourage SGBs to establish collaborations with the school and the local community. Most of the schools that we work with will, whether they are wealthy schools or struggling schools, will benefit from a collaboration with people who are based in the community, businesses, local business, parent structures, the health department. So we're talking about intergovernmental support to schools. That's what we try and encourage. We are cautious about endorsing particular organizations, so we don't market other organizations for schools to work with necessarily. We give schools an option, and that is the way in which they would be expected to function. Talking to the matter of admissions, I think everyone's aware that the admissions process is a tricky one. It's been a complex and complicated one. We've hit the wall sometimes with many schools struggling with large numbers of applications. What do we do with 1,200 applications when we only have 180 posts or seats for learners in a particular grade? Our guidance has been to schools to say, what is it that they are able to work with? What's the reality on the ground? And once again, because our approach is not to fix that, it would be to refer back to the WCD. We are aware that the WCD has in that regard supported schools to guide them, because at the moment, unfortunately, policy doesn't guide schools sufficiently to make tough choices when they have to actually minimize and make a judgment call. Largely because in the Western Cape, we've been experimenting with online applications for a lot longer than other schools around the country and other provincial education departments. We're continuing to help schools to troubleshoot, to fix where it can be fixed, and most importantly, to encourage schools to stick to the policy. As everyone's aware, with Bella having been promulgated, schools actually have to be abiding by the internal policy as well as the policy of the provincial and national government. So we can't willy-nilly be deciding how it is we want to do things right, left, and center. And that's what we encourage schools to do, is to stick with the broader ambit of what legislation dictates. The GBF has taken responsibility for talking to schools. So we gather information from schools. We often use the Google platform where we are accessing information directly from SGBs in order to feed information back to the WCD. So the idea is not that Mr. Campbell sits, does a bit of a thumb suck, gets a sense of where his gut is at. All of the information that we pull through and feedback is gathered from data that is lying within the schools. So in that sense, we do represent the schools and SGB's voices. Around matters financial, most schools or many schools require support around financial management and how it is that they need to do that and do that well. Often treasurers are treasurers because they they get appointed into positions because nobody else to do the job. And so guided support SGBs what you're dealing with often is what sometimes gets referred to as the missing middle. So middle class parents are now, and this talks to the issue of fee exemptions, what we're finding is that parents who in the past would have been able to pay 100% of the fees are now applying more increasingly for fee exemptions because now they can't, and that leaves schools sitting with the issue of, well, where do they find the additional revenue in order to run the school? Because in the past, what would have been happening is your middle income parent would have been able to subsidize the lower income parent. Now that band is increasing ever more, which leaves SGBs often hamstrung in terms of where to from here. Just to talk through or talk to the point that Mr. Campbell raised earlier, which is around no fee schools or schools that struggle in order to receive support for the running or functioning of the SGB. The fact that the WCED pays a subsidy towards the membership of the GBF is a huge plus. Because we sit on the national board, we know what's happening in other provinces. So we don't struggle with schools having to sit and question, do we move with membership of the GBF or not? Because schools know that all they need to do is to submit a letter that serves as the motivation, and the WCED then does what needs to be done in order to make sure that membership fees are covered and schools then receive the support that they require from an external stakeholder in the system. Matters of discipline. Yeah, I think one doesn't need to go very far you just have to listen to one news feed, not even once a day. That'll tell you what our communities are struggling with and hence what our schools are struggling with. Learner misbehavior, difficulties around relationships between teachers and learners, which SGBs have to deal with, is certainly on the increase. I think it's a societal issue. I'm a systemic thinker, so I would never put the blame on the learner. I think we are dealing with matters that are way beyond the education sector alone. We're talking unemployment and poverty, electricity, water, etc., etc. So the issues are huge. I don't think that they can be dealt with by the education department alone. I don't think they can be deal with this within the education sector of government alone. I think we have to be talking across departments in order to better understand the solutions. Nonetheless, what SGBs have to deal with are disciplinary hearings, serious misconduct, and often they find themselves struggling in that regard. So a lot of the work within the GBF is to upskill, capacitate. We do a lot of training around how to run disciplinary processes in a meaningful way that supports both the so-called victim as well as the so-called perpetrator. We have, if I may refer specifically to some months back, high-profile examples of high-profile situations that the GBF gets called into. We take the example not so long ago of an incident that happened at Pinelands High School. The way in which we navigate that kind of thing is to hand back to the WCED. Fortunately, in our province, we have a departmental reaction that is well structured, well formulated. There's good protocol. Schools understand it. So those kinds of matters are dealt with more efficiently and effectively by SGBs, perhaps less so in other provinces, but we won't talk to that too much at this point. One of the issues that we would like to table as a serious concern around discipline matters is the issue of suspensions and expulsions. These are timed processes, but they take a long time for implementation. The HOD, we're aware, Mr. Walters is certainly on the button around this. He will argue that he is responsible for and takes time to look at these individually. None of this goes beyond him. However, my particular concern, having sat on it in the SGB, is what happens, how we navigate and support around the impact of a disciplinary hearing. The focus is often on the learner who is expelled. We, as the GBF, wonder about support to the learner, support to the parent, support to the victims, if I can use that word quite loosely. But I don't think we are putting enough emphasis on the support to the actual SGB, the disciplinary committee members who themselves sometimes are traumatized, if I can use that word very loosely, by the process that they engage in. It takes a lot for someone to sit in a seat and say, we're expelling a child. And what people sit with, knowing what that actually means, is not often mediated sufficiently, one would regard. Communication. I think Mr. Campbell's mentioned this sufficiently. We are an organization that focuses on the notion of communication and consultation. So our encouragement to schools is constantly, if you don't talk, you can't build trust. Silence is not an option. All silence does is make people feel more guarded. So the phrase that was coined was no secrets, no surprises. I think that's essentially what we push for with all schools. Be open, think things through carefully. Transparency is the name of the game, and that's the way in which we argue must happen. One of the challenges that lots of SGBs sit with is an assumption that they are representing, as parent members particularly, we've had this with teacher members too, that they represent a constituency. So parents often have to be reminded that when you sit in the SGB, you don't actually have to be responsible for consultation. So you are delegated to make a decision in the moment, and that's something that people struggle with. I think it comes with experience of what democracy means, what it's meant for many people over the years. Lots of people who sit in SGBs, with all due respect to the chair, are older, having come through a process of understanding democracy to mean my voice is not my voice, it's the voice of everyone else that I sit here talking on behalf of. So that requires a lot of learning and unlearning and relearning on the part of SGB members. Moving to infrastructure, we tend not to focus a great deal on this as the GBF. We regard this as the job of the WCD and Public Works in particular. What our schools do struggle with are long timelines around maintenance. I think the WCD does a lot of proactive work around vandalism, particularly if one listens to all of the announcements pre-school holidays, data that's collected after school holidays to look at burglaries, vandalism of schools when schools have been closed. But the response time remains a challenge, and that's something that we would argue schools are grappling with quite intensely. Overcrowding, I think, is less of a challenge in the Western Cape. The fact that we are dealing with in-migration, I think, is the phrase that's been coined, often talks to struggles around planning. So school and classroom space, because schools were built a long time ago, we had a long discussion the other day about how schools struggle with having to think about how to fit more learners in a room just because the school was built a really long time ago, accommodating for a particular number. Nonetheless, our argument and challenge to schools is to find a way, to coin a cliche, do what is in the best interest of the child. So teach and teach well. Our argument is if the teacher-learner ratio has to go up to 40, then 40 it is. Certainly teachers are trained to teach classes of 40. So we can with to say to school with schools and therefore an ability to deal with the overcrowding issue does leave an SGB with a lot of groundwork to do. It means that the SGB takes responsibility for holding what it is that happens on the school site. This is not a job that's taken on by any departmental official. The principal, along with SGB members, have to monitor and ensure that whatever needs to be done gets done when schools are maintained or expanded. As regards municipal services, also our emphasis is on encouraging SGBs to establish relationships within community fora where such discussions and debates can take place. The district officials have a rigorous approach to watching, looking after issues related to, for example, electricity, water payments, and so on. And so if those kinds of issues land with the GBF, our tendency would be to refer back for schools to liaise directly with the district officials responsible for that, for those matters. On the issue of compliance, I mentioned earlier, the GBF's stance is essentially what does the law say, and then we need to run with whatever it is that legislation dictates. I want to state quite clearly, though, that compliance in our understanding is about accountability and not about tick box. So when there's often the use of the term compliance within schools implies let's get this done irrespective of the quality, and that's not what we encourage schools to do. Our argument is not get it done, hand it in just because you want to be green flagged on the system. It really is about making sure that you do what you need to do, but do so with quality submission. In terms of monitoring and evaluation, we see ourselves as a data source. So we will gather information from schools and SGBs. We will encourage SGBs to engage in a self-evaluation, but we do not see ourselves as a monitoring and evaluation body. So the SGB functionality tool exists. We would ask schools to look at that and apply that in relation to understanding where they are at and how it is that they are actually meeting what is required in terms of their own functionality. So the GBF is certainly not seeing itself as a structure or a monitoring and evaluation body. What we use is the WCD consultative forum to when the WCD gives feedback to the GBF, what it is we sit with is to work with the data that we receive from them in order to help schools to think through differently what it is that they do. And I'll hand back to Mr. Campbell to close us off. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Muller. Just the last few comments from me on behalf of our organization. We were asked by the committee to have a look at the strategic outlook for SGBs in our country and the kinds of things that they're going to be facing. Clearly, in the future, fortunately, next year, by the looks of things, there won't be staffing cuts, but it's likely that in the future there may be. Money is tight, as we know, across the country and across the province. And so schools are going to have to think creatively about that. Those that can afford to think creatively and are able to charge fees. And the social and economic landscape, Dr. Muller has mentioned the social environment. It's It's increasingly pressurized. It's increasingly pressurized in Cape Town and particularly on the Cape Flats. And schools are continuing to grapple with that, and we don't see that curve as slowing down. Obviously, we have a critical support role in all of this, and we continue to look forward to working with schools and encouraging them and capacitating SGBs. And finally, just some words from us again: ethical governance, effective governance, strong and supportive governance. It will be for in our member schools. Thank you, Chair.
All the presenters. Members, we will now deal with the second presentation from FETSAS, whereafter we will do the questions and answer sessions based on both of the presentations. So please remember to make notes of your questions for after the questions and answer. My apologies, for after the second presentation. We will just quickly allow the next presenter. Okay, thanks everyone, members. We are ready to start with the second presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the members. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today to talk a little bit about FETSAS. Now, it's our honor to present to the Western Cape Education Committee on a matter that is central to the future of our province and our nation, and that's the role of the school governing bodies. My presentation today aims to provide a clear overview of the work we do at FETSAS, highlight the significant challenges faced by our SGBs, and then most importantly, to foster a conversation about how we can collaborate to strengthen school governing bodies in the future and in the Western Cape. I thought just before I start, just to introduce our team quickly. My name is Almeen Slabber. I'm the acting provincial manager. And then our provincial manager, Andre Franklin, sits right here next to us. And then on the far side, we've got Dorian Meyer, Wayne Sicily, and Peter Fouchier. They are all three deputy provincial managers. And then unfortunately, Ilse Oudendal could not be here this afternoon, as well as Caroline could not be here this afternoon. But we're very proud and happy that our Deputy CEO, Rian van der Berg, is here, and he will present with me this afternoon. And then we've also got Justus Skoonraad, a principal of Swartland Hoërskool, and he's also serving on our provincial council as well as our national council. So that's our team here today, very passionate all year. Now, at its core, The mandate of FETSAS is simple, yet very powerful, we believe. We are here to create a stable and supportive governance environment in our schools. And our primary goal is to equip school governing bodies to manage their responsibilities effectively, thereby allowing principals and teaching staff to focus on their core mission, and that is obviously quality education. We maintain a very clear distinction in our work, and FETSAS focuses exclusively on governance and leaving that critical day-to-day management of the school to the principal. That is very important to us. Every action that we take at FETSAS, we're guided by our principles, that is of accountability, transparency, and a commitment to the best interest of the learners. I thought to share a little bit about our national and provincial footprint. And I'm so sorry, maybe you find that I've mixed the little slides a little bit. Just follow me. It's just to keep people awake. That's all. Okay. Right. Okay. FETSAS is the only bilingual governing body organization that operates in all 9 provinces of South Africa. Our activities are coordinated nationally from our national office in Bloemfontein, ensuring a unified and consistent approach. Here in the Western Cape, our structure includes a provincial council comprised of dedicated parents and principals who provide strategic advice. And then our provincial managers, we are on the ground and we're leading the day-to-day operations and offering support to all our members. We're fortunate we're a group of 7 in the Western Cape that works together. And I'm very proud to also then nationally, we've nearly got plus minus 2,000 to 2,100 schools or member schools. And in the Western Cape, our membership has grown to 498 affiliated schools as of today, 498. And we're waiting for 4 schools to join FETSAS. We hope that will happen in the next week as well. In the Western Cape, there are 1,469 schools, if I'm not mistaken, and that means we represent 34% of all schools in the Western Cape. Now, one of our most vital functions is the training and capacity building we provide to governing bodies. This is not a once-off exercise. It's an ongoing process designed to ensure that our governing bodies are competent, knowledgeable, and compliant with all the legal prescripts. Our support is comprehensive, covering a range of areas. We provide essential legal advice and policy support as well, including advice on clarifying national and provincial education legislation and regulations as well as providing templates for critical school policies. We also assist with drafting legal and employment contracts to protect both the school as well as the staff. Furthermore, we provide an array of resources, including training and workshops on financial management and many other topics as well. Our website is world-class, we believe. It's a world-class resource for school governance, and we provide all our members with our highly useful pocketbook. And I just want to show the little pocketbook, Schools, Law and Governance. And I know principals have told me that that's their little Bible. And as a matter of fact, that's mine too. And this little book contains a nutshell of all education legislation in as well. So it's a very popular little book that the schools get from FETSAS. This is also just an example of our training material in 12 languages, and that includes Braille as well. So we're very proud of that too. That's just an example. Our support and expertise. Our commitment to our members shows in the way we give fast. Expert support whenever it's needed. FETSAS managers are available at all times by phone, email, or even in person. We base our work on a strong and up-to-date knowledge of education law, supported by experts like our CEO, Dr. Jaco Deacon. I think we're very fortunate. I think we've got 5 lawyers that works with us, and experts. Next to me sit another expert in finances, technology as well, so we're extremely fortunate. Importantly, our job is not to help schools bypass the law. Instead, we guide them to follow it correctly and protect them from being misled or taken advantage of by others. That can happen as well. I'm not going to talk about the technology and the financial expertise. Rian is going to talk about that a little bit later. While we do not have a formal audit function, our support model allows us to continuously monitor the effectiveness of governing bodies. This is achieved through direct engagement, feedback from our provincial managers, and the outcomes of our training initiatives. Our training and policy tools are designed to encourage a culture of self-assessment, which is very important to us, and legal compliance, helping governing bodies operate effectively within their legal framework. Just want to talk a little bit about our training, our online and face-to-face training. In 2024, we had only 9 sessions online, and we had delegates, and that is governing bodies that took part in these online training sessions, 2,426. And 2025, year to date, we still got many sessions coming up, but we've only done 5 sessions and 1,525 delegates. So our online training is very successful, and we're very proud of that. And I think I went too fast. Our face-to-face training, I only unfortunately took over on the 1st of July. So I haven't got any more information or past information. So I took the information from January to May 2025. We had 150 sessions face-to-face. It can either be at one school or a few schools together. Over 1,000 delegates from 212 schools. And as a team, we traveled from January to May over 6,000 kilometers. So we certainly make sure that we do get to all our members as far as possible. What are the challenges that governing bodies encounter? I will start with relationships with WCD, and many of these challenges the Governing Body Foundation also mentioned. So the first one is the appointments. Unfortunately, that takes long. We receive quite a few complaints. It takes so long, or in some instances, it can take up to a year. And then also to then get the result that they have to re-advertise, for instance. So that is a challenge that governing bodies are struggling at the moment. Furthermore, some SGBs feels that there's inconsistent communication from the WCD. And I think what we mean with this is the WCD communicate with the circuit managers, and the circuit managers need to communicate with the governing bodies. And really, the majority of the circuit managers communicate with the governing bodies, but we do get those exceptions, that doesn't happen. And I think that's the inconsistent communication that they're talking about. Furthermore, some SGBs feels that officials take advantage of their lack of legal knowledge. So we certainly play a big role with the legal side with the governing bodies, but we have discovered that there's a lot of the governing body members that really struggle with the legal side. They only want to serve. They don't want to be there for the legal side. A major concern is the ever-increasing administrative burden on principals. In the last 2 weeks, we had a flood of emails with regards to the SGB functionality tool. Now, we also know that comes from DBE, and WCD is obviously following and need to do what's been asked. But the task for principals, the admin task, is really, it's not easy. It's a challenge. Even when I was there in 2023, I had something to say about that as well. So to make matters even worse, they are required to submit all their school policies. And if a policy fails to meet a specific item on the checklist, the school is forced to relook at it, add that into the policy. But we also know that that process for the governing body to look at the policies is a long process, because everybody needs to look at that. They need to agree on it. They need to discuss that. So that is quite a challenge for a few governing bodies that we have spoken to. Then lastly, principal and SGB dynamic. A lack of clarity on the legal distinction between governance and management. That can create a friction. I think GBF also spoke about that. And our role is to constantly clarify these roles to ensure a harmonious and productive working relationship between the governing body and the principal. Further challenges to mention quickly is admissions. While most principals consider the Western Cape's system that they need this, what we that we are more to make it. So the current criteria is acceptable as well. Overcrowding in classrooms, I think that is an issue in our country. Schools that are struggling with 40 or more learners in their classes, that is always an issue. And that sometimes, unfortunately, and that's what disciplinary hearings. Some challenge is the disciplinary hearings that schools and governing bodies really don't know the process or the procedures. And then on top of that, all these learners arrive with their legal lawyers, and the poor governing body, they're not lawyers at all. And they have to sit with this, and the lawyer thinks it's a court or something. So it's tough situations for the governing bodies with that. Quintile division among schools, I think this is a very serious point that I think our country needs to look at. We have a few schools that have requested FETSAS to help them to change from a quintile 4 school to a quintile 1, 2, or 3 school. They simply do not have the funds. They simply don't know how are they going to pay their governing body educators by the end of the year. By the end of the year, we're busy with a few cases where they can't actually pay any extra money for the governing body educators, and they don't know how to handle it. So we're busy with all those legal matters. So quintile divisions, I think, is a huge problem. Collection of school fees, I think everybody knows about that. It's finances is difficult. More and more schools are struggling with school fees, and more schools are struggling with bigger amounts of exemptions, applications. That's definitely happening in most of our schools. I've not heard of a school where exemptions is less than the previous year. It seems if every year it just gets bigger and bigger. Municipal matters, these are all, I'm aware governing body have mentioned some of these points as well. Municipal matters, yeah, quintile 4 and 5 schools, they pay horrendous amounts, and it will be so helpful if schools can maybe negotiate with the municipalities, but that has certainly not happened in a few years. Then lastly, all the sort of legal side and the compliance, that is a challenge for some schools, and that is why I'm so grateful that the structure that we've got and all the resources that we can provide to all our schools to help them to make sure that they stay on the right side of the law. Right, and that's the end of me, and I'm going to hand over to Rian. Oh, I don't know what I did. I'm sorry. Jeez. There you are.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I know you've been sitting for quite a while now, and the online guests as well. I'm going to continue and maybe zoom out just a little bit from where we started with the challenges. And when looking at challenges, FETSAS devised a plan to zoom out and look at the levers that would move the needle of quality education in the country. Instead of looking at one instance at a time, we said, what are those pillars that we need to look at to influence the systemic nature of change? And in saying that, we devised a blueprint, what we call a blueprint, for ourselves to measure education, for ourselves to measure the sector against, but even provinces against. And those pillars are there. We've got a published document on that called our blueprint. And I just listed the strong pillars. Each pillar has 5 building blocks under that to just have a look at what we need to do, what can we manage, and what can we measure, so that we can see if 10 years from now we're building a better sector than we had today. So if I look at the pillars there, leadership and governance and management, we believe strong principles, good principles, the best principles in a school make a big difference. A principal in each school, not an acting principal, but a permanently appointed principal in each school makes a difference. Strong governing body, well-capacitated governing body, well-trained governing body, and then strong management team at the school. There are further building blocks there. The McKinsey report a few years ago stated that no school or school system can function at a higher level than the quality of its educators. And we believe that each class should have a teacher every period. Not just post-provisioning in a basket, but a teacher standing in front of children, capacitated with resources to be in the class at all times. Communication, I think both GBF and Almin earlier mentioned that strong communication between the stakeholders in the sector is important, clear communication, and two-way communication. We find it often that we write letters to the department at circuit, district, or even provincial and national level, and months go by before reply. But then when the other way communication comes in, there's a 24-hour notice for a meeting. Stop everything. The provincial department is talking, and I think there's clarity and respect in that needs to grow. Funding has been mentioned. We believe that the school funding model needs to be looked at, especially in the ELSIN sector. The same funding model that is now standing for post-provisioning and for norms and standards and the quintile system has been the same for the last 20 or 25 years with no changes in that. And especially the ELSIN sector is falling behind as far as the needs go in that. Infrastructure, norms and standards for infrastructure, what it should mean. The dignity of our learners need to come first as well. Water supply, electricity, internet connectivity, even other means of technology should be forming part of the infrastructure at a school, but definitely looking at the minimum norms and standards for infrastructure. Partners and relationships, how do we deal in the sector with stakeholders? A strong partnership, cooperative governance model that we support, and we've got 5 building blocks there to support and measure the relationship between governing body associations, other professional bodies in the sector, and then the provincial department and national department, as well as then linking up with the industry and getting the local industry involved in supporting our problems at schools. Curriculum outcomes, not going to talk about that one much. And then we need to have a look at the socio-economic outcomes and programs around a school. We say that school is a segment of society. It is a reflection of society. And school cannot fix in 7 hours what society breaks in 17 hours. If school is the only vehicle to support socio-economic issues, that is transport, feeding schemes, welfare, social workers, we believe that each school should have access to a social worker under that pillar to ensure that the wellness as well as the the mental temperature of our society is managed, especially for teachers as well as for learners. I'm going to quickly jump into what Helmin spoke about, our support and expertise. I want to focus on 2 issues that I deal very closely with, and it's going to get a little bit more granular to show how we try and manage with call it data-driven analysis, data-driven decision making, and the financial expertise as well as the technology expertise. I want to welcome the chair. From a financial point of view, it's a good move because probably one of the biggest challenges in our schooling sector is that of proper funding. It is the biggest expense in the national government slice of the pie, but we need to make sure that each rand we spend is productive. So we produce, not just a magazine for the fun of it, but we try and focus on expertise, looking at specialized knowledge. We explain that everyone has a wallet, but that does not make them a financial advisor. And there's a difference between knowing of finances in a school level and knowing specialized finances. And that's what the Center for Finance aims to do, focusing on matters of specialized finance in this challenging time that we are facing at this point in time in our economy and I guess in the world. The Center for Technology focuses on the education technology curve, the cycle of adopting technology, using technology for better learning outcomes, not for the sake of using technology. And we produce a magazine every now and then, I think every quarter, that goes out to all our members with opinion pieces, some articles, and then some inputs from members of the industry who we associate with, not endorse, but who have strong value-added solutions for our schools. What we see, the flavor of the month which is debt collection in schools, and we've got more than 5 members of industry supporting schools in that, which is a highlight to a spotlight rather to the systemic issue of school fee collections and school fee-based schools. If we look at some insights based on the data management, this is where I want to get slightly zoom out and zoom in at the same time, looking at the challenges that we face and the challenge the province might face within the national context, as well as our approach to data analysis. If I on our website, we've got a report available called the Education in Numbers report, and you're welcome to go have a look at that. What we've done is just try to visualize the information in the school realities report produced by the DBE, and it's per province. So we have looked at it on a national basis. But if you look at this map, we quickly see some of the systemic issues just based on the percentages. And the two provinces that stand out here would be the Western Cape, and that's just a snapshot of end of 2024, and Gauteng, where we see that the schools, the number of, or the percentage of schools are far less than the percentage of learners and educators. Gauteng runs at possibly double, and the Western Cape runs at 1.5 times. Now, this is not necessarily just a snapshot, but it's a trend that can keep continuing, because we know what's happening with, I think you called it in-migration, semigration. I'm from Gauteng, and half my friends now live either in Mossel Bay or somewhere in Stellenbosch or Strand. But the influx of people has a systemic and faster effect than what infrastructure and school funding can do. So maybe that's just a quick little, I'll call it an orange flag to know that that's the trend. And if that trend continues, we'll be sitting. Kids don't move with seats. They move with parents, and then the seats are not created. The systemic change that we see there is what school governing bodies have been funding as far as extra staff, and this is just educator staff, over the last 15 years. An 87% increase in SGB funded staff nationally, so it's a little slightly different in the Western Cape. 87% increase in SGB paid staff. This is parents paying out of post-tax money, school fees, to catch the, call it the lack of increase in staffing at school level. Over the same period, national education stats show a 1.5% increase in staff, state paid staff. If we look at the Western Cape numbers there, it's slightly different. And interestingly enough, you can go to the next slide. Interestingly enough, only a 44% increase over the last 15 years, but we can see that there's a decrease in SGB paid staff since 2022. SGBs have lost 1,300 staff, educator staff, in the last 3 years. And the insights for us in that is the money is running out. SGBs cannot afford to employ more staff in the same basis that they used to. The provincial department is not capacitating at the same loss rate, which means that we are putting more learners in overcrowded classrooms and possibly affecting the quality of education. Just, yeah, anecdotally, not because it's funny, but just visualizing the 15-year trend there to show that is the percentage change in learners in public schools over the last 15 years. You can see the 15-year line. The Western Cape is the second last bullet there. The 15-year line looks close to 30%. And if that trend continues, if you look at the 1-year line, it's fairly flat line, but the 15-year line is a concerning line. What is not included in there is the number of independent schools that have been established in the province. Gauteng leads the national pot with 38% of all independent schools in the country, and Western Cape is second with 13%, close to 14% of independent schools, which means if the independent schools didn't grow by that number, that spike would have been even higher. A couple of 100,000 learners are housed in independent schools. So the public school system gets a relief from the independent schools being established and running fairly successfully. Maybe just as a comparison to province versus national, This is the learner school ratio nationally, 572 learners per school. If you look at the Western Cape, you will see that it's running at close to 1.5 times that at 822 learners per school, which gives a burden on admissions, gives a burden on infrastructure, and also shows the trend as far as that goes. Interestingly enough, Western Cape is still second in line, with Gauteng schools more than double the national average of schools. So the other provinces are decreasing. You will see that your neighbor, the Eastern Cape, has the smallest number of learners, and I think there's a lot of semigration across the river from the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape. Yeah, that one we can that's the educator numbers. We can jump over that one. Some data that we've tried to analyze is that of language offerings, and I know that the Western Cape has a big contingent of Afrikaans learners, Afrikaans lot and Afrikaans home language learners, and this is in 7 years. The reduction of schools that have taught Afrikaans in either single medium, double medium, or parallel medium. And these statistics come from the LOLT reports that we get from the National Department of Education. We try and run reports on all languages every year, and to see the migration of language offering based on the constitutional right of mother tongue instruction. On the finance side, and this is challenges highlighted by means of a data analysis approach that we took. We analyzed over 130 schools' annual financial statements as produced by the auditors and submitted to the provincial department on the specified deadline of 30 June. We wished we had more, but we segmented the schools into primary schools and high schools, and then also just quartiled them, not quintile them, but put them in the top 25%, the second 25%, third 25%, and the last 25% to get some measure and some benchmark of how it is going financially in schools. I've not done the expenses as part of the slide deck, but just to show how granular, maybe just jump back one, how granular it is. All primary schools in fee-paying sectors do not look the same. All high schools are not average. There's actually nothing like an average school. Each school is very much individual. And the first 25% has an average of 33,000 rands worth of school fees nationally, and learner numbers of about 1,000. The bottom has learner numbers of about 415,000 rands worth of school fees. What is critical to note here is that the exemptions, which are running away, are not necessarily impacting the bigger, more expensive and more wealthy schools. Although the numbers are big, you can see in the first column there, exemptions of close to 5 million, but it's a 13% impact, but it's high. It should not be that high. But the smallest school at the third and the fourth group has close to 25 and 30% worth of loss of parents, and that is where the school fees are low. And this shows us that exemptions are running out of hand. I just visualize it to see the difference in these four groups, just to make a differentiation between 4 different groups of high schools. We did the same for primary schools. You can see the numbers are similar. Big jump between the call it the bigger and more expensive primary schools and high schools. There's a big jump from grade 7 parenting to grade 8 parenting as far as the fees go, which means that high school is a more expensive model because of, I think, one of the critical things is the offering of subjects and subject choices that the school must offer to give a quality national senior certificate, and that makes it for a slightly higher expense there. If we look at that visually, that's just for interest sake. I want to quickly focus on exemptions and highlighting the fact that funding model is under pressure. Budgetary benchmarks shows exemptions under pressure, and I know this is a national function, the exemption regulations, but the effect of that is schools are not compensated for that. over and above the level of the norms and standards for a quintile 1 learner, which makes sense. But the concern of our schools, and we ran SNAP surveys on regular basis, in 2024 and 2025, we ran those SNAP surveys. And this is a quick reflection of the provincial representation. I want to jump through this quickly. Most schools, 50% of them say more than the same time last year, or the same as the same time last year, about 40%. So 90% of schools are feeling the effect of the growth in exemptions. So the challenging times that we live in economically is hitting the school bottom line immediately. You can see that it's not just rich schools, it's a mixed bag of low, under 10,000 Rand schools, and then some schools over 45,000, which is a small slice of the pie. This is where the concern lies. The exemption as a percentage of the budgeted amount for school fees is about 37% of schools say 20% and more, which means that 4 children pay for the 5th one. Each child pays for 1.25 children to go to school there. I just want to show this quickly as a base for our argument that the formula for exemption needs to be reviewed. And this is a challenge that we face at all provincial levels, but the spirit of the regulations says it's for people who are unable to pay. And it also mentions equitable. But if we look at the table here, we can see that there are families in the same school district. This is a district of 12 schools with different school fees. And based on the current formula, some of the schools at a higher school fee level, the obligation of school fees are low. Now, where's the equitability when the school fee is 61,000 and the parents earn 600,000 and they pay 0? And a school fee of 21,000, same family pay a school fee of 19,865. Nearly full school fees versus no school fees. And this is where the problem lies. And this is the concern that our schools raise. Not opposed to exemption, not opposed to people who are unable to pay to come to school to enable access. But the abuse and the unfairness of the system is where we've got a problem. And it's glaring on the screen if you look at it there. Coming to the end of our presentation, some of the other challenges that we do face is that of parent community engagement. I think the GBF mentioned it as well, that timing of meetings, parent engagement, work commitments, travel commitments make it slightly difficult for some parents to be very engaged. We also have an apathetic parent body in some cases where they expect the school to be the parent. I was at the National Dialogue last week and sitting in the theme, the breakout room for education, we mentioned that we possibly need more parenting than politicking about education at this point in time, strengthening the family structure, strengthening the community involvement, and establishing once again the basis of our public school dispensation, our public school identity. It's not a state school, it's not government school, it's not a private school. It is a public school where the community is involved, and we need to work on that engagement. We've got some possible steps forward, ideas for collaboration, for looking at the strategic view of what we can do on that. And our proposed way forward in light of these challenges, we would firstly urge an approach of far more collaboration than competition. What we hear from our schools, echoing what the GBF has mentioned, is that there's a lot of compliance requirement, sometimes complying just to tick the box, to not be in trouble, rather than compliance for establishing the true outcome of that. We do not want to be in competition, tug of war. The department says this, but the law says that. The department wants this now, but we're busy with that now. And not competing for time or effort or ego, but actually taking hands and working together. And we are proud to say that we have a good working relationship with the GBF in the province and other professional bodies and stakeholders in the interest of better education. We want to establish clear, direct, and official channels for communications. And I know we've got quarterly meetings with the department, but we need to be heard and we need to be listened to as well. Our schools' interests need to be heard, and we want to establish, kind of the respect that I spoke about earlier. If we send a letter, meaning the school, the governing body, or an association, quick turnaround time, closing the loop on education, on the communication, instead of waiting in mid-air for that. We want to take hands, collaborate on training of our SGBs, equipping the SGBs, and ensuring that our training material is viewed as quality, and that we establish, where we do the training, that we can consider our SGBs being trained and continuously trained by us, not just tick box and say, we've done induction, now the SGB is running. We have weekly webinars, we've got a video library in that. In closing, I think we are committed to, we're not just committed and an invested partner, I think we are a passionate partner on education, and that's what I hear our colleagues do as well. Our officials, our staff members actually give their lives to school. We live, work and breathe the education sector, and we provide vital support on legal guidance, financial matters, other matters, and training to our members and relationship to our members, with the ultimate goal of ensuring that every SGB is knowledgeable, effective, and a compliant body capable of driving the quality education for all, as set out in section 20, where the best interest of the school is paramount to the work of the SGB. By working together, we believe that FETSAS and the WCED and the SGBs can overcome the challenges that we noted, and working together for a prosperous future for all our learners in all our schools. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Van Berg. We appreciate you that when posing your questions, please indicate whether it's directed towards the GBF or the FETSAS team, as well as if you have the presentation slide number, but that's not the end of the world if you don't. So yeah, let's do a full first round, and the procedural officer will keep an eye out on the online platform. Member Walters, over to you.
Chair, I think there's quite a number of questions, but I'm going to limit myself to the ones that I think will help to give me answers to some of the other questions as well. My question is directed to FETSAS. You had a breakdown, financial breakdown there of the impact on new teachers being employed, or rather SGB teachers being employed, how that is under strain. A number of indicators there. Do you have any indicators in terms of overheads, growth in overheads in a school? Because it would be interesting to compare the, you made a comment earlier in your presentation about, call it non-core, my words, non-core functions that tend to be projected or absorbed by a school. I would imagine that could be traced by an increase in overheads at school level as well. Do you have indicators like that? Is it possible, if you don't have them, to provide that? I do think it would be interesting to do a comparative study. What are the cost drivers at a school nowadays? You showed us what are the impacts of cost drivers at a school. What are the actual cost drivers?
Yes, we actually analyzed.
Apologies, Mr. Van der Berg. I just want to check if we can do one full round of questions, because if we do it in a dialogue form, we might sit here till tomorrow. So, Member Syed, over to you.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and let me thank both entities for the presentations and for the work that they're doing in the sector. My first one is with regards to the school governing body foundation. Just what, and I think maybe in fact, actually both FEDSAS and the school governing body foundation can respond to this, because I heard mention of Bella. If I could get a sense, because I couldn't get a very clear sense in the presentations, was given some of the changes that Bella has brought to the landscape, in what way are you supporting schools to ensure that they are not only compliant, but that the environment is conducive for the implementation of Bella, and particularly in as far as it affects the administrative element of SGBs, but also issues around admissions and those type of things, right? But also in that, do you come across any challenges in that regard from specific SGBs? Because we do know there was obviously opposition. We had public hearings here in the 6th administration. We went across the province and we heard different SGBs engaging with us on this. But also then in terms of the department, and they are not physically in the room, but they are virtually in the room, what's the kind of synergy there when it comes particularly to issues around Bella? And I would like responses from both. Then also just in terms of the monitoring and evaluation, what type of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms do you have in place to ensure that the kind of interventions which you propose, the kind of training you are giving and support, that SGBs at particular schools are actually running with that? Because I mean, many of the problems we face as members of the committee and issues that come, I can speak for myself here, and I brought it to the attention of the former chair a lot. It's conflicts between principal and the SGB, or SGB members and senior management staff, parents. Then the last question is, and perhaps it's a bit unfair to you to expect of you to do this, but how do we encourage, particularly in our poor and working class schools, how do we encourage parents to actually get involved in the work of SGBs? Because many a times the SGBs, it's left to certain parents. In some spaces, it's just because of access to resources or wanting to have a feather in the hat, to have certain political influence later on, to stand as a ward councillor. Then you go into the SGB. This is what happens, and hence you have the conflict. So how do we ensure that we encourage parents to link it to actually quality education? And then finally, I want to support you on the point that you've raised about the quintile. This has been something that we have been raising. And I think, look, most certainly, I'm confident that this committee will most certainly take it up. It's not necessarily that the WCED has been making a great effort with regards to the issue of changing the manner in which we determine the quintile level at the school. The problem is at national government level, most certainly. But if we are willing, and I think we must put our heads together with you guys as SGB bodies to see how we can have a unified approach as the Western Cape and work with other provinces to make sure that those criteria are transformed. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Syed. Member Christians.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenters. Just a couple of questions. I don't know, maybe you can help us, that GBF only represents about less than 20% of the schools. FEDSAS represent 34%. Who's, it's if you are doing such a good job, why do you have that low representation? I'm talking about the Western Cape, I'm not talking about national. If you're doing such a good job, why do you have such a low percentage? Because if they said that some the numbers is there, and so it can't be a member of. I would like to know from FEDSAS what do they charge and what is the composition of their members, because GBF has given 90, 130, and 70. And then is there not a duplication, from the two bodies? I know one said not legally, other one is very strong on giving legal advice. Is there not a duplication? Why should we have two like that? Two organizations almost doing the same thing. And then you went in a lot of detail when it comes to the problems in schools, societal problems, and all of that. If I understand it correctly, if you strong, there's a strong emphasis on that, then I think a lot of the other understands their role when it comes to finances, appointments, and all that. Principals and principal understand his role, and they work together, and there's no friction between the two, because we're giving guidance. So if your main goal is to make sure that they understand their roles completely, I think we should have there's nothing that it's going to be a long time before we're going to one of the presenters, and we understand as a committee, the societal issues, because from societies into the school. We know all of that. We've been here a long time. But what I'm saying is there's little we can do. That's why we've got school resource officers and all these 120 stuff. But what I'm saying is, if you concentrate and your goal is to make sure that the SGBs is capacitated and those type of things, I think it will minimize problems that we have in our school. And like GBF said, one of their main thing was principle against the school chair of the school governing body. It's a problem. So if I'm just asking, you've given all of that information, but I think your core function is to make sure that we get quality education, but start from the top. And if you sort that out, then it will filter through. Maybe just my last question is, please understand, I'm not saying you're not doing X, Y, and Z. I appreciate the presentation. My job is to ask questions that I'm not sure of, and I didn't see in your presentation that maybe the big thing is, school fees is a major problem. That is just what we have. We went to other schools, and one of the challenges is not getting in school fees, and we know the quintile is a big problem. I can't understand. In Mitchell's Plain, one school is quintile 4, one is quintile 1, and they're in close proximity. So we understand all of that. But what I'm saying, maybe your presentation to school governing bodies is get the parents involved, get them to pay school fees. That is how we're going to, because we're not going to get more from government coffers. If you're a parent, you believe that you must contribute to your school's education, to your child's education. So just to say, how do you manage? Do you have presentations and speak to a school governing body and say, listen, we'll have to get some school fees out of this. It's a school paying fee. And some schools tells us some parents can pay, and some parents are unwilling to pay because the schooling and education is not important. You understand? So I'm going to park it there. I'm going to leave it to my colleague here.
Thank you, Member Christians. Member Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Chair. I suspected as we come down the line, the questions will be covered in the sense. I think just for perhaps GBF, Member Christians has made mention of the percentage and schools represented. I just need to understand the balance of schools in the Western Cape. Is there any efforts in also assisting them, consultation in any way? I do understand in terms of what their functions are as school governing bodies, but not everyone on the actual body understand what their function is, and that creates a lot of problems in schools, or situations that could have been resolved should that governing body be fully capacitated. If I can perhaps just, Chair, get some insight into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kaiser Philander. The last one for this round, Member van Minnen.
Thanks very much. Let me start by asking both organizations what your sort of working relationship with each other is, so to speak, so we can just understand that relationship. And then also having a bite at the issue of the schools that are not involved. Is there a commonality in the schools that you are not working with? By which I mean, is it, are there specific issues with schools that you are not dealing with that make it difficult for them to possibly participate in capacitating organizations? So I'd be interested in that. I mean, I'm very aware that the schooling I got is completely different to the experience of learners at inner city, heavily overcrowded schools in conflict-ridden areas. Are you finding that in terms of the schools that you work with, there are patterns that possibly lead to schools not being able to participate in this kind of program? Then just, I'm interested to notice in those figures on slide 9, the very sharp drop off in 2017 that then picks up again in 2018. Was there a reason for that anomaly? I'd just be interested in that. And then also, a third question I was reading yesterday, and I cannot remember the context of where I was reading it, that up to about half of the current cohort of teachers are due to retire in the next few years. I know it probably falls outside of your remit, but in terms of the pipeline of teacher training, what is happening in that space, and are we going to see teachers being brought into the fold, or is it a case of, like nurses, for various reasons, we currently are seeing a throttling of training and replacements? Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. Let's start with the GBF first. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Campbell, and you are welcome to direct your questions to other members of your team. And if there are any uncertainties around questions that was asked, please feel free to, on an informal basis, just to sort of ask the question to the member again if there's something that you are unsure of. And then after that, I will hand over to the FEDSAS team for their responses on the first round of questions. Thank you. Just a microphone, please. Thank you.
In response to the question about membership and why our membership is relatively low, according to the questioner, at 20%. We don't have a strong marketing arm, and so we don't have the capacity for that at the moment. So one needs to market quite actively in order to get schools involved, because they hear about us, but unless they've actually experienced us, it's, you know, they're not going to be coming into our orbit. What we try to do is, when we have training, we will invite, let's say, training in the Milnerton area, we will invite schools that are not members of the governing body to come to the training, and then we'll talk to them and say, listen, if you thought that was worthwhile, you're very welcome to join us. So it's a bit of a puzzle, because clearly schools are not paying very much at the low end, but it seems to be about, in part, the turnover of SGB members. And so, you know, one SGB says, well, maybe we should, and then within a short period of time, there's another SGB, and so they're not engaging fully with the possibilities that exist in terms of organizations like ourselves. The other question around duplication of work between GBF and FEDSAS and our relationship, I would like to say that our relationship is excellent, and we collaborate. For example, FEDSAS and ourselves collaborate before provincial consultative forums and look at what we're going to present and who should present what. So we have very good relationships with FEDSAS. And the duplication of work, no doubt there is duplication of work. But we are free to operate the way in which we are free to operate, and we are legally, in terms of our of the Schools Act, entitled to operate in the way in which we operate. And so there are times when we will look at something and say, okay, FEDSAS is doing that, well, we don't need to do that. But of course, we don't always have the same membership. There are some schools that have a dual membership in the Western Cape, those that can afford it, but not always. And I don't have those figures of dual membership. A question around why are there still problems if we're capacitating SGBs? It's a good question. And one that we wonder about, because when we do training with a particular SGB, it seems to be very effective, but then other problems arise. It's a complex environment, the SGB environment for schools, and particularly schools that are struggling with resources. And so there's stress on the SGB. And so new problems might well arise that we didn't deal with. And we only know about the problems if they approach us. So we're not fishing around in schools. We wait for schools to come to us and say, we remember of you, we've got this issue, please can you assist us? How do we ensure that schools, that parents are encouraged to be involved in schools and governance? I must say it does fall a little outside our ambit. We have to define our work area with SGBs. And recently we've had conversations around, for example, how involved do we get in educating parents about SGBs, or educating parents about social media and cell phones and so on and so on. And we believe that we've got to be very careful about that line and not cross that line too readily, because otherwise we'd be swamped with all the myriad of issues that schools face. I think I may have answered those that are pertinent to the GBF.
Thank you very much. I just want to throw in another one for the FEDSAS team, just in terms of the we've heard that the WCED does subsidize some of the GBF funding or funding to the GBF. Just want to confirm if the WCED supports FEDSAS at all, and if they do, on what sort of basis. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. van der Berg.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the questions. It's good to see that oversight is looking at the work we do and taking interest. The cost drivers, we've not highlighted the cost drivers. I didn't want to flood you with more numbers, but I can send you the results of our what we call environmental analysis. We do that every 5 years. We ask schools to participate and give us the numbers so that we can measure the trend in what's happening. And the big cost driver in fee-paying schools, the second biggest number on the income statement, is salary. Salaries would be the biggest one, even if it's as low as 50%. In some of the bigger schools, going up to 70, 75%, which we don't think is sustainable. And then municipal services, maintenance, learning activities, and projects, infrastructure expansion. Those would make up some of the big slices of that pie. But we can share it. It's actually available on our website, but I'll make sure to share it with the Secretariat. We produced a budget guide, a pocket guide for school budgets to look at where, in which quartile you slot in to see what the benchmark number is there. So we've got a lot more detail on that, if that satisfies the question. But those would be the rough cost drivers of that. Something that we have not mentioned is the fact that our estimation is that if there's 44,000 educators paid by SGBs, we look at about 100,000 non-educators, ground staff, administration, so that increases the pool. As far as the question on readiness for BELA implementation, and possible challenges on the issues with Bella. I think that was a long discussion for many, many years. We are not Bella ready. We are Schools Act as amended ready, and we teach on that. We train our governing bodies to comply. I think, sadly, some of the Bella discussion was in the political and ideological dimension, and there's a lot of practicalities that changed with the Schools Act amendments, which is hitting the schools now. Chapter 4 on finances changed quite a bit with quorum on governing on AGM, disclosure of budgets. So there's a spirit of more transparency and disclosure, which was not even spoken about in the media for the past few years before. And that is a very practical thing that needs to be looked at. So we are not just implementing, we're ready. That doesn't mean that the schools, with the change of the Schools Act, the schools change immediately, because it's day-to-day business and compliance. I think the biggest compliance that we fail to see is that of grade are being offered in all schools and capacitated by government. It is law. You are non-compliant as a parent. You're a criminal if your grade R child is not in school, yet there's no capacity in the system. And the deflection of, maybe 1 or 2 admission cases, or I think we're missing the point sometimes in the Bella discussion instead of ensuring that we get quality education. But FETSAS is ready and facing those challenges on a day-to-day basis, and then also managing the relationship between departmental officials, not just in this province, but in many provinces, where the power creep, the law changed, now I can do this, but some sections never changed. And yet there is now questions being asked on custom and practice for the last 20 years under the banner. And that's where I think we need to make sure that the collaboration, someone at National Department of Education said the other day, maybe we should go slow and get there rather than just run away with it. But as far as FETSAS goes, we are 100% supporting the implemented law and getting our schools trained on understanding that. I think GBF did not mention something. I don't know if you want to add to that maybe at this point in time, if I may, Chair.
Not having answered that question, we are encouraging schools to be completely compliant with all aspects of the new or amended South African Schools Act, from admissions through to the finance matters and so on. And takes some work because schools, governing bodies are not reading the full act, or not looking at the amendments necessarily, apart from what they hear in the press. And so we need to keep reminding them of what the changes are, and that's part of our training as well.
I think the next question was on monitoring and evaluation and what mechanisms we use to see how engaged our membership are. And maybe I must just clarify here that it's by law a voluntary association of membership at a school governing body. We work on a very similar basis, that we've got a differentiated fee per school, but the same fee per learner. So schools pay on a per learner fee. So a smaller school would pay less than a bigger school, where the economies of scale usually work in favor of the bigger school. So we've got a cross-subsidization in a sense, and our membership is aware of that and supports that. In the Western Cape, we have what we call 2 provinces. We've got the more affluent schools and the non-affluent schools, so the poorer communities. The numbers in the Western Cape exceed the membership in most of our other provinces. In fact, in 7 of the other provinces. So we talk of the Western Cape as our 9th and 10th province, because we've got such a big community of subsidized schools with subsidized membership. We do get the same subsidy. In fact, it's not necessarily the organization that gets the subsidy, but it's the member school who qualifies, gets the subsidy from the Western Cape Education Department, but it's paid over to, I think, to the organization just funneled through to them to support those schools. The, a very big portion of our Western Cape schools would pay in the region of 4,000 rand. So the question is not affordability. And GBF will agree that we put a lot of value for money on the table, but it's still voluntary. And the volunteer membership basis comes with some people that are sick go to the doctor and some don't. The doctor gives some of them medication, some take it, some don't. We don't have control over schools. We have influence at best, we've got influence over our schools. The Western Cape history of our membership, I think a few years ago, we had close to 600 members in the Western Cape, and we walked away from some members who stopped stopped engaging. We have a measurement tool in our own, call it customer relationship management process, to see who is involved in face-to-face and which school is represented. Who tends our online, who calls us or emails us with still take our advice and still work with it. Further than that, we struggle to make deeper inroads. And I think there was a question about parent involvement in that sense. Difficult to say why parents are apathetic. I've got a few ideas. As far as the quintile reform goes, I just think we all agree on that. I don't know if there was a question on that, but we can see from the statistics that quintile reform is necessary. The question from the member about our 54% representation between the two organizations, which might be slightly less because we've got some overlapping membership. Yeah, that is a low percentage given the fact that there's a lot of subsidy in the province given to schools. Once again, I think capacity to visit all schools, capacity to market, capacity to get the schools' slow decision-making cycle into, there's interest, and then the interest dwindles because the SGB must meet once a quarter, and then there are higher issues on the agenda. I do believe it should be made compulsory to join a SGB association. If not joining on engagement, that the capacity of the province goes to the governing body associations that work in the province so that the capacity could be increased to service those, very similar to the proportional share of the trade unions and membership of the deduction of people who are not members. We've got a lot of free riders in the system, in a sense of we do the work for our members, everyone benefits, and that kills, in a sense, our capacity to not grow further. Duplication and cooperation, very much so, a lot of duplication, but once again, I think it was free association. The histories of our organizations just started on different tracks, and free association of schools, but we do share a lot of notes and then have a good working relationship, not just in this province, but in other provinces as well. I think the question was, if I'm not mistaken, sir, the result of the fruit of the tree is not so good if the input that we give is so good as far as capacity building, equipping material. Why is the capacity not on the increase? And this is partly due to the fact that we've got volunteers at school, parents, regular people, not skilled in the legislative framework of school, and then also not understanding governance. There's a lot of right and wrong management, but there's not a lot of good and bad management. And we need to do good for our schools and not just what is right. People are volunteers, which means that they have a day-to-day job. There's no fee, no compensation, rightly so, for volunteering on an SGB, but that means that it is the last capacity that you fund yourself. If you have some other pressing matters, you might step away from the volunteering job and hope that the others carry it. So there's a little bit of a conundrum in the importance of SGB members versus the volunteering nature or the capacity and available time in that. You asked what we do in school fees, I think related to the question of the chair. School fee schools and no fee schools. Our mix is, like I said, probably a third of the province schools would be termed high fee, high income schools. Probably 50% would be on the low fee schools, which would possibly be close to the ones that would, some of them have requested quintile changes, downgrading in quintile to receive more funding. We've got member schools that charge 700 Rand per year, not per month, but per year in school fees. Some of them opt to stay fee-paying schools so that they have more of their Section 21 rights and obligations. But the net effect of that is actually lower fee income, because the norms and standards for that school would be more than 1,600 Rand per annum per child more. And then some of those don't pay. We constantly look at initiatives for schools. We've got something on fundraising available for schools, various potential models. But if the school doesn't have capacity, there's no champion to drive it. Maybe just as a side note, one of the initiatives that we run is for schools to be a distributor of cell phones, SIM cards. The parents port their number, and if it's on a top-up basis, every top up in future from that changed number, 5% goes to the school. It's like a My School card, but on something that is consumed on a daily basis, which is data, and looking for schools to adopt that. Essentially, people in the poorest of poor communities buy data, and the school there's no more money in the money tree at school, but we've got to look at the existing economy, and we're looking for initiatives in that. I think I've exhausted most of the questions. I think there was a double up. The question was covered by the membership percentages. The working relationship with GBF, I'm glad to hear that they agree with us that it's a good working relationship. Unlisted schools we've spoken about. I think one of our difficulties is a relationship economy, being schools, and it's difficult to scale relationship. You've got to meet a school, you've got to drive to the school, you've got to have meetings in training sessions, and some of our work is scalable, and we've gone that route with online and printed matter and self-training YouTube channels and video libraries. But a lot of the questions come over the phone and in actual conversations. I think there was a question about the patterns. Do we see patterns of schools that engage and schools that don't engage? The number one pattern, if when there is a problem, the school needs help. When they think they're healthy, they don't need the doctor. But as soon as there's a problem at the front door, they call the doctor, and then suddenly that is a big part of engagement. Yeah, as far as our membership base go, we do believe that our engagement process shows who our engaged members are, and we're happy to say that there's a big correlation between a membership of a governing body association and a well-functioning school. And that's one of the triggers. The question was on the 2017 dip. I'm glad that you spotted that. 2021 was post-COVID, but 2017 is a data error at the Department of Basic Education. A lot of numbers highlighted red in 2017, so it seems like there was something missing in that year's data on various fronts in our data analysis. Teacher training pipeline, we are concerned, not just in new teachers. The profession is not elevated as a sought after profession. We need to create more assistant positions. There should be more bursary and study loans for creating teachers on the future, but we're also missing people in the pipeline for management. I don't know if the GBF can agree with that. The pool of talent for senior positions, promotion positions are reducing. One of the concerns we have is that the principal seat is a hot seat, and people might want to ceiling at deputy principal because of the nutcracker of the principal seat between the SGB, the parent body, and the community, and all the needs, and the departmental or government pressure on that side. I don't know if you want to add to that one. And I've covered this question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wanting to pick up on a couple of things, kind of additional responses to some of the questions. I response to Mr. Christian's member once he returns. To Member Syed, the issue of, I just want to flag one example around the amendments and the guidelines. One of the huge challenges, which I don't think is being thought through carefully enough within the Western Cape, is the issue of criteria for admission of learners when it comes to feeders. So what the guidelines are suggesting is work with radius feeder schools, siblings, and work address. So I think the work address of the parent may assist us, but if you think about, and if let's zoom in on the southern suburbs, actually we will go completely against the transformation agenda if we apply those as they are. And you're nodding, so I'm not going to need to expand on that further. And I think that's what schools are saying. You're telling us to do one thing. We did something different in order to address that, to make our school diverse. Now you're saying, let's go back to the old. So I don't think there's often an understanding of how things look. I don't think it's just in the Western Cape. I suspect in Gauteng, Parktown is an example, Sandton maybe an example, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a challenge that schools are grappling with. I think our FETSAS colleagues have talked to the issue of monitoring and evaluating our own capacity, not capacity, influence or impact. Schools come to us when they struggle, and when they're not struggling, then we don't hear from them. One of the measures within the GBF is very much individualized, so it doesn't give us a pattern of M&E for our impact, because if school A comes for support and we support school A, that's what we're able to track. So we're able to tell you with school A, C, and G, this is what we notice in terms of the improved effectiveness. But we can't say that across the board because we just don't know. Sometimes we'll have hundreds of people on an online training course. How those individuals go back to their schools and implement what they learn is something that's quite difficult to track. So that's from the M&E perspective. Low representation, perhaps Mr. Campbell mentioned this when I slipped out earlier. The reality of it is, and I think it was on one of our slides, we're a small organization. Why not more than 290? Because we have one individual who works in a half-time capacity. So we as the board push Mr. Campbell to say, are we upping our numbers? Are we upping our numbers? And his thing is, well, I just have so many hours in the day. So unfortunately, that's our challenge. We would have to, I think that the onus doesn't lie with anyone else but us. I think it's an issue we must take back to our own national board, because if in the Western Cape we cannot argue that there isn't money because the WCD will subsidize us, then what stops us from saying, well, in the Western Cape, we need 2 warm bodies instead of 1, and this is how it needs to roll. So we are also cross-subsidizing across provinces and so on. So yeah, it's a debate for a different space, I would like to say. I'm going to talk to the retiring teachers challenge. So I'm involved in my other lives in teacher training and teacher development. I think if there were HEIs in the room, they will tell you they are doing their work. So the data is telling us that we're not short of teachers in the country. What we are short of is a matching and placing. And so I think what we need to be looking at is the conversation between HEIs who are pumping out a large number of teachers. It's the employment of the correct teacher into the correct post. Far too many teachers who were trained for English and life orientation are teaching grade 4 across the curriculum. Far too many teachers who were trained to be FET teachers are being employed by primary schools. So there's a slippage there, and I think we have a role as SGB associations. Let me talk for the GBF. I can already see in my mind thinking around the need to capacitate SGBs to make sure that they appoint the right people for the right posts, because that's not what's happening, and not from the level of corruption. I think sometimes applications come in and people work with what they've got, but that isn't a good enough excuse. So I don't think we are going to struggle to have teachers as warm bodies in schools. I think the issue is going to be quality and making sure the right people are in the classroom teaching our children. Yeah, I'm hoping that that colleagues will talk to member Christians around this. I want to make perhaps a controversial statement, and I plead for my colleagues' indulgence in this, is to say, if you're training well, why isn't everything just sorting itself out? And perhaps I'll hold within education. I have trained hundreds of teachers and hundreds of principals and many SGB members. There are never guarantees that quality training equals quality implementation. And I'm saying that for education, but I'm sure that you will find that in the legal profession, you can run courses for lawyers, you can run courses for OTs and physios. It's there. So I would not challenge is too strong a word to use. I would deliberate around the issue of, it's not a systemic issue. I disagree. I think that much of what we do in education is value laden and is systemic. Whether SGBs do what is right or not is a value issue. Whether parents pay fees or not is a value issue. Whether parents engage or don't engage, or not involved or not involved in their children's education, is a values issue. When a principal and the chairperson fight with one another, there's a value issue there. And we cannot be saying governing body foundations and FETSAS must fix that, because actually that talks to the heart and soul of what human beings are. So we can do just as much as we can, but I think it is a societal issue, and I do think that individuals in our world need to own that. We can do what we can, but I think we have to acknowledge that the issue is much larger than us. And that isn't to say that we will shut shop and go home. I think that is to say that people like us will continue to try and to do this for as long as we're around. Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just perhaps on a slightly lighter note, we're convinced that there are many freeloaders who obtain GBF information because a lot of it is emailed. They obtain passwords to our website from friends in other schools. And so I think perhaps our footprint is a little bit bigger than we might imagine. It might be the same for FEDSAS, but there's not much we can do about that. That's our gift to other schools.
Thank you very much, members. One more round of questions or follow-ups from anyone? Nothing. Okay. Anyone online? Just if you can just see if there are any hands, but we don't have any members online. Nothing. I just want to confirm something in terms of the registration fee that the WCED pays to both FEDSAS and GBF. Just want to confirm, is it 4,000 Rand per school across the board, or does it work on a percentage?
It is effectively the norms and standards for quintile 1 school times 2. I think that's the formula. So I think currently it's about 1,872. I don't know. 1,872 times 2 is the subsidy paid to the school, or which the school has access to from the WCED. So a lot of schools merely pay that which they get from the WCED.
Okay, perfect. Yes, Member van Binnen, I'm missing my days in finance. Thank you very much. With that being said, I would just like to thank the FETSAS and the GBF team for joining us today. I have been informed that we have people here this afternoon from Johannesburg, from, I don't know, from Bloemfontein, from from the West Coast, everyone that made the effort to be here today. We really appreciate your in-person presence. And I'm sure when we get to the committee resolutions, once you have left, that we will definitely be extending an invite to both of the associations again. But thank you so much for what you are doing, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. There is some refreshments outside, just to the left, and then the committee will just conclude with some administrative issues. But thank you very much, and you are welcome to leave now. Thank you so much. Yes. Yes. Apologies. Okay, members, just in terms of committee resolutions, we have not recorded any specific resolutions by the procedural officer. I would just like to, while we are busy with resolutions, inform Member Syed that I have inherited your request to go to the exciting town of Worcester sometime. So just before you send it to me, I have received it. So we will definitely look at a possible slot for that visit. Any further committee resolutions? Member Walters?
Chair, Chair, there's two things that stood out for me. One is to get a further breakdown of what the cost drivers or what the financial breakdown is of schools. I think to also easing yourself into this, Robert, I think there was a story there's a story to be told to understand the kind of pressures people have. And then the other aspect that I found interesting was the comment that non-core function, well, it wasn't the exact wording, but it boiled down to this, that there's pressures that are not core to education, that schools have to absorb And I just think that's the kind of thing that we should explore going forward, because I think there is a story to be told there.
Thank you, Member Walters. Any further resolutions? We've got your back, Member Christians. Perfect. I just want to confirm any other committee administrative issues that we have to deal with.
No, but while I got everybody, Chair, if it's okay with you, next week is the oversight visit.
Yes.
But everything is fine.
Okay, I just want to. We will be visiting.
Landbou.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, members, we will be visiting Boland Landbou in the afternoon. I do know that the Standing Committee on Social Development, we're also doing a site visit to a not anymore. Okay.
Chair, there's very big people who go to school at Boland Landbou. Can we have security?
Chair, can you please call the member to order?
Members, please.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, on our Standing Committee program for social development, we had initially a visit to one of the old age homes in the metro. I've asked that we just sort of reschedule that visit. We are anticipating to have the departments back regarding child safety, but I've asked Ms. Jamke that we have that session online. I hope that will help in terms of the travel arrangements.
Thank you so much, Member Philander. Are you covered?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, members. Thank you so much. This meeting is now adjourned.